Oh, hey. Sorry. I dozed off there. I fell asleep watching Patrick's live last night. Oh, that was horrible. Oh, so boring. Put me right to sleep. All that crying and whining. Anyway, guys, check it out. So, on the video yesterday, as I said, Patrick's going to do the Darvo response. He's going to load up a live tonight, and he's going to cry and whine and be like, it wasn't me, it was someone else, it's everyone else's fault. And what did he do? Exactly that. And then he got on there and he started saying, oh, guys, I only run one platform. I only run one Facebook, my Facebook page, guys. That's all I got. These other 8 pages are somebody else, and they're making a bunch of money off of those 8 pages, and I don't have control of that. I just have control over what I get on my Facebook page, and it's my money or whatever. And I told Betty I'd give her a third of that. Supposed to get a third of all 9 platforms, but right now she's only supposedly getting a third. You guys know what's happening. He's making a video to try to build a defense. He's trying to say, hey, like, you know, I'm only doing one platform here. All this other stuff is someone else. And you and I both know that he's talking to Betty behind the scenes, and he's telling Betty, hey, now, you know, tell him I gave you some money. I gave you some money. I didn't completely dupe you. So that way he thinks he's good. That dude thinks he's smooth as a sheet of paper. He thinks he's good. He's like, oh yeah, I got Betty on my side. Betty's going to go and tell the police that I gave them a bunch of money and I was taking care of them and buying them this and buying them that. And then I'm in the clear because all those donations I took, Betty's going to say she got something out of it. I don't think you can excuse all of that. I really don't. And I don't think that once the state police gets Betty in a room by herself without you around telling her what to say and deboing her like you've been doing, I don't think that she ain't gonna hold up, bro. She ain't built like that. She might be an old redneck from West Virginia, but she ain't built like that. Once them investigators get her in there, and they start looking for those, what they call, like, anchor responses. There's anchor points that women do when they're lying, you know, like, they try to anchor themselves, you know, and so they, like, lean back on something, or they'll lean forward, or they'll touch something, or they'll put their arm on something, and it's called anchor points. And when people are telling lies, they look for anchor points because it makes them feel better whenever they're solidifying this bullshit story. And so these investigators are going to notice that, and they're going to break Betty Whittaker down, and then she's going to fold up. She's going to fold up like an envelope, and she's going to be like, well, Patrick only gave me like, you know, $1,200, and he's made like $50,000. And then that's where they're going to find the problem. So you ain't in the clear. You ain't smooth as a sheet of paper. You think you are, but you're not. So moving forward into another issue that you guys all need to be aware of. Patrick hired a guy to fly a drone down there on the property about a month ago, and that was a scare tactic to try to keep people from coming down there and fooling around with them and, you know, messing with them and interfering and, you know, harassing and that kind of thing. So he hired this guy to come down and immediately fly a drone, different elevations, different light angles, from all over the property down there, and they loaded it up on Facebook, and that was a scare tactic. It was to like make people think, oh shit, they got drones down there flying around. You can't go down there. You'll be saw. You're seen. They'll see you. They saw you. Whatever. And so that guy contacted me and said, hey, Patrick hasn't paid me. You know, he offered me a sum of money to come down there and fly a drone. I burnt a bunch of batteries. I spent an evening down there, and he said, hey man, I'm gonna hit you on the whatever, the PayPal, the Cash App, you know, however they pay each other, Zelle. And he's telling me that Patrick owes him a bunch of money. He still hasn't paid him. So he conned him into coming down there and flying the drone, and then he still hasn't paid the guy. So you need to step up and pay your drone guy there, buddy, for your fake security scare tactic that you were doing to try to keep BJ away or other people or whatever, onlookers, looky-see-er doers. Another issue that I have is the way that you have, you know, got on here with these lives and stuff and started saying like, you know, it was it was all somebody else, and it wasn't me. And I just went down there with good intentions, and I've known them for 40 years, and just all of a sudden you decided to go down there, and you was talking about over the years you've always went down there and did this and did that, but you was married and had kids and all that. Bullshit. So, dude, when you were doing that life that you claimed was so busy that you couldn't go down there, let me ask you this. When you were living at when you were living in Odd with your boy up on the hill up there in that house that had the great big asphalt, like, I don't know what it was, basketball court or whatever, and it was all brand new, completely remodeled on the inside, and your girl that hooked you up with the brand new black truck or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? How come you wasn't doing anything with the Whittakers then? How come you wasn't going down there and feeding them then? How come you wasn't filming them then? I mean, I'm just asking, maybe you can drop it in the comments or hop on a live with me and you can explain that. A lot of people are asking that question. Why now? Because you were making money. That's why. So moving on. Fun fact about the Whittakers. We're 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes into this. Fun fact about the Whittakers. I wouldn't call it a fun fact, but it's a very interesting fact. For the last 40, 50 years, Betty's been taking care of those boys. Ray and Timmy and Freddie was very, very wild and hard to handle back in the 80s and in the 90s. You can imagine what Betty was dealing with. I mean, that must have been a tough day to deal with those three. Wasn't too hard to deal with Kenny and Larry and Lorraine, but Ray and Freddie was just like off the chain. Like, those are the two that, like, the locals around here, us locals, like, we knew not to go down there because those were the ones that was going to come after you. And it's not fun. It's not a fun fact, but it's a fact. They would actually bark and act like animals, and they looked a little rough back then. They still kind of do, but they looked rough back then before Freddie passed away. And they would chase cars, throw rocks, throw cans, throw sticks, and they would do all that stuff to scare people, to thwart them away from coming down there. And people would go down there at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and rev up their engine and blow the horn and shoot a gun out the window. And I mean, it was crazy, the stuff that people did. And the locals even got involved and tried to, like, scare people away from going down there and messing with them. We all tried to, like, just protect the corner of Raleigh County, like the Whittaker name. Everybody knew not to go down there messing with them. And if people were out of town down there messing with them, then we kind of all stepped up and did something, like blocked the road. I didn't so much get involved with all that back then, but I knew people who did, and it was very interesting to hear about all that. The world hasn't heard those stories. The world hasn't heard the stories about the way that they had the windows boarded up in Timmy and Ray and Freddie's rooms because they would jump out the window. They would literally raise the window up and jump out the window. And then they was like, Betty would have to chase them down the road. They was gone like a wild dog. They'd be all out in the woods and in the neighborhood and down the road and everything. And so they had to baby gate them back in the 80s and the 90s. And I remember vividly seeing like pallets nailed up over the windows and stuff of their rooms, and they had to baby gate them down the hallway to keep them from just going absolutely nuts. And it was like something out of a movie, folks. It really was. And that's the sad part. It's a fact about them. It's an interesting fact, but it's the sad part of what Betty had to do in order to be able to keep them safe and keep them home. And they didn't tell that story because that's not entertaining. It's a fact, and it's stuff that people need to think about when you think about the stuff that the Whittakers have been through in their lives over the last 30, 40 years. So the abuse that's been happening to them, that was totally not the way to do that. The abuse that's been happening to them for all these years, I don't feel sorry for Betty. I really don't. You guys can say, oh, this and that, she's a good woman and she took care of them and all that. She didn't have to do it like that. and she didn't have to pimp Timmy out to be able to get money. You know, she could have said, hey, you can come down here and you can film us right here on this porch and we'll tell you our stories. And when you get a check, you can come down here and you can build us a house, or you can buy us some groceries, or, you know, you can help us get a car or whatever. You can pay some light bills and some water bills. But she didn't have to do it like that. And that's what I don't agree with. Tomorrow, maybe later tonight, depending on how I feel. I'm very tired because I've had a very long day. We'll get into some more. And as I promised you guys, to come on here and talk about this, you know, I'm not making any money. I'm at zero. I'm at zero right now, you know, and if I make 30 or 40 bucks off of a video, come on, folks. That's unnecessary. We're not here to get rich and get famous and to get clout, and what someone else commented this evening, clout chasing train, or, you know, the whatever, like the fame train. I've been famous. This is my second go around right here. I don't need all that. And if we do make $50,000 on Facebook Reels, then guess what? You're not going to know about it, but I'm going to do something great for unfortunate people. Take it as you want. It is what it is. You guys have a good night, and I'll get you on the next one. Bye.